Those of you that like going to school, please don't watch this video, because what this young man is about to say is going to make some of you really angry. This young man believes that one of the biggest problems we are facing in Nigeria is Western education. He believes that Western education is a tool by the colonial masters to enslave Africans. This is his story.
The education system we have in Africa is an education that teaches us how to use white man manufactured properties to solve our own problem, and not how to create those things to solve the problem for ourselves. If you go to a Nigerian hospital, you see in a complete hospital facility, the surgical knife, the glove, sterilized water, the syringe, the needle, everything from beginning to end, all are imported from outside Nigeria. It simply means that should in case Nigeria have to fight a war today with America or China, they don't even need to come and start fighting you militarily. All they can just do is to stop the supply. You discover the difference between the type of education we have today in Africa and education where the obsession was to get certificate and to get ego. A man is studying because he wants to be called a master degree student. A man is studying because he wants to be called a PhD. That man is not asking himself, since I became a master's degree student or a professor of food nutrition, which food have I added to the ofe egusi my grandmother discovered?
Bro, you say that Western education is one of the biggest problems we are facing in Africa. Can you explain what you mean by that?
Western education in Africa can be likened unto a man who have a dog in his house. And so the man began to train the dog on how to go and get an orange. And at some point, the dog began to adapt to that teaching because of the level of intelligence that is available to the dog, to conform to new learning, to conform to new teachings. And so anytime he says to that dog, go and get this orange, the dog easily goes and fetch it. But one thing the owner understands perfectly well is that dog intelligence and teaching available to it only stops at going to get an orange. The dog can never come to a point one day in his life that he will begin to think about how to plant an orange by himself, grow the orange, nurture it, and have it as his own. So the day he stops providing oranges for the dog, there will be nothing at all for that dog to pick. So the education system we have in Africa is an education that teaches us how to use white man manufactured properties to solve our own problem, and not how to create those things to solve the problem for ourselves. For instance, if you go to a Nigerian average medical today, a Nigerian hospital, you see in a complete hospital facility, the surgical knife that the doctor is going to use to carry out an operation, the glove, the sterilized water, everything from beginning to end, the syringe, the needle, all are imported from outside Nigeria and comes available to the doctor. So the doctor is only on how to use those materials. It simply means that should in case Nigeria have to fight a war today with America or China, they don't even need to come and start fighting you militarily. All they can just do is to stop the supply of those. Stop supplying them needles, stop supplying them gloves, stop supplying them surgical knife. You just find out that automatically your medical doctor becomes helpless, because his own knowledge stops at utilization of those equipment to solve problems. But the origin of education is education that begins the creation of those elements or those equipment before you begin to utilize. Because in the face of war, we don't ask you whether you know how to use it. We ask you how your availability of creating those things. And so today in Africa, we have been availed an education that governs the energy of the youth and focuses them on pursuing just memory and not pursuing solution of creation of the problems facing their environment. We are not yet facing our environment in Africa. We are facing education. We are facing book. And unfortunately, written books and written exams don't solve problems in our society. And so education becomes one of the biggest problems in Africa, because through this system or through this mechanism, we have continually graduated over thousands of young boys every year from the university who come out and they become helpless before the face of the society, because they have no single solution they can offer to the society. You see somebody said he studied pharmacist. In the company where he's working, all he's doing is receiving drugs, mixing the drugs together, and then selling it to the public. But all the drugs from beginning to end come from India, You come to talk about the paracetamol powder, the ibuprofen, everything comes out from outside the Nigeria to him. All he knows is now to just sit down there and be selling those drugs for people. And the next thing that pharmacist began is to start getting jealous that there is another young guy out there who didn't study pharmacy and that person is selling the same drug he's selling. His anger is not that he has much more better knowledge than the person. His anger is that guy didn't have certificate that he had. So the ego was built for certificate, because certificate is just a license that gives people rights to earn money. That a man who has spent years in school learning something that does not solve any problem should be paid to keep the man's stomach being fed, and then enhance the ego of that man, even though that man have no solution to any problem in the society. So in this system, we have continually graduated young boys who becomes a threat to security, a threat, because an unemployed man is the real evil in existence. So I am of the organic resurrection of an African education system that will reflect our values, that will reflect production, that will reflect solving the problems in our society. Because you see, when you hear Western education, the person who called it Western education is not stupid. No, sir. The person who called it Western education understands perfectly that this education was created for the sole purpose of building and sustaining industries in the West. It's just like an ego created an education, and the ego calls it ego's education. Everybody knows that ego's education will only train the ego and enhance the ego on how to pick and kill the bears and other animals. The ego's education can never serve the bears or the chickens. What they know perfectly well that ego's education was created to kill other animals. Meanwhile, the bears' education, the chickens' education, will help them to run away or escape. So why the white man created an education system that keeps us mentally busy to be exploring and utilizing all their resources? Then an African man have to look in to begin to think about the type of education system that once was before the white man came. Because education actually emanated from Africa. Growing up with your grandfather, you discover a point comes in the days of your life that even though you are growing with him, they says, which work will he learn? Because every community have a particular skill that they are known for. Some communities in their excellence, they do blacksmith. When we're talking about blacksmith, we talk about people who created metals, hoes, gun. Before the white man came, we have already begun to farm. And we're not farming with our hands. We are farming with metals. So there are people who have mastered the technology of using metals already and molding them into different shapes. So education that was available in those days was that a young boy will be taken and go to learn those things. And then you discover if this boy is allowed to learn these things, that boy begin to innovate. Automatically, as the boy is coming up or coming to maturity, source of livelihood and survival is guaranteed. And so the boy can easily pick up a wife. Some of them goes to learn orthopedic surgeon. You come in a particular community, you know that this particular community was known for certain bones. Some of them knows how to do midwifery. You see a particular man that says, if your wife is pregnant, we don't have hospital here, but go there, you will not die. The assurance was there. So the education was fixing the environment. And so you look around us and you ask yourself, so there was no white man in our society, and yet our ancestors they discovered palm wine, they discovered palm oil, they discovered many things. The reason was because in your culture, you face your environment. And the origin of innovation is a man who looks at his environment desperate to solve the problem there. When you begin to think in that direction, automatically you discover the difference between the type of education we have today in Africa and education where the obsession was to get certificate and to get ego. A man is studying because he wants to be called a master degree student. A man is studying because he wants to be called a PhD. That man is not asking himself, since I became a master's degree student or a professor of food nutrition, which food have I added to the ofe which my grandmother discovered? Because you look at the food we eat today, it is the same, exactly that same food our grandmothers discovered. Egusi, ogbono, nsara. So you that studied, that had PhD as a food nutritionist, which food did you add? You find out that all you knows how to do is to speak big grammar. Because if today the white man understands perfectly that if our pharmacists begin to discover how to build drugs from cassava starch, automatically money is pushing directly into your village. Development starts coming there. The farmer starts getting rich. And then again, the pharmacists start looking directly into using those herbs in the bush to create drugs. Automatically, the pharmacists start even helping in forest preservation. Because once you begin to utilize those things, you create wealth out of those things. So what we have in Africa before the white man came is a functional education that prepares youth, so that in those days you don't see a young man that people says he doesn't marry because of his financial incapability. Because the best root of a man getting into family is a man who can take care of his stomach. But today, numerous of African youths are gallivanting all over our streets, helpless, and they doesn't have anywhere to go. You don't even talk about marriage to them, because when you talk about marriage to them, you are like a man talking to somebody who have no hope. You are like a man talking to somebody who have not even fed himself. You have produced people who are very. Something happened in our class. Final year students, 5 people have studied 5 years in the school, and then the lecturer asked a very simple question in the middle of the class. He says, how many of you want to travel outside Nigeria after graduation? People who are about to graduate in 3 months' time. And then 70% of the class raised up their hand. The lecturer says, how many of you want to come back if you finish traveling? Everybody returned back their hand down. And the lecturer waved his head in agony. He says, you people need to think, you people need to change the way you people are thinking. And what is the ideology? 5 years in school has provided a bountiful fool that couldn't provide any value to the society. And what the society is looking for is value, not your certificate or your qualification. So they are about to graduate and they look around and they discover we have no simple solution we can offer to anybody's problem. I am about to graduate and I can't even produce anything. You have this, you find out that you are helpless. You are a contextual meaning of there was a man called Adam, and Adam was found out that he is naked, completely naked. And so they start being that pressure of them to try to travel outside Nigeria where they know they are going to work without a certificate. Because you don't care what you studied in this country. Once you travel to America, Canada, England, all this engineering you did here, you double the certificate to one side. You kept the certificate to one side and begin to do what? Work normal job level that they pay people per hour. And he's comfortable with that because the 5 years of keeping him in school was only a journey to get certificate. And certificate don't solve problem. Certificate widens dependency, creates consumers, and creates a society of helpless youth. So when we are talking about resurrection of African man culture, we are talking about bringing back African education, no longer Western education. African education is that education that is based on value, looking at how do we solve a particular problem in this particular place. How do we look? The best root of this is that even the question we are asking our primary school students have to change. Because when they are in their primary secondary school, the question always comes like, what do you want to become in future? That is a question of title. Which title do you want to hold? So the young boy says, I want to become an engineer. The boy says, I want to become a pharmacist. These things are titles, ego. The question should change to, what problem do you want to solve when you grow? I know you are coming up as a young boy. Which problem do you want to solve when you grow up? So if that boy says, I want to build car, and then that boy gets into university, as he's studying, he'll be asking himself, am I coming there? Do I now know what is pacing and rents inside a car? Or am I just here wasting my time? So a boy, as he's growing, he says, what do you want to become? The boy says, I want to be something who is manufacturing drugs. He says, that is so beautiful. So as that boy is studying in school, he's asking himself, am I coming there? Am I producing those drugs? The question have to change from what do you want to become to which problem do you want to solve? If that question enters in that dimension, automatically you will see that people are now joining with direction. But today, what we just have is people who are pursuing certificates, because today you want to get into politics, they ask you a certificate. You want to get a job, they ask you a certificate. You want to get everything, they're asking you certificate, because certificate is just a license that a man who has spent years in school studying what does not solve anybody's problem have to be paid money to keep his belly taken care of, so that he continue producing more fruitless. That's people that doesn't bear any fruit, any solution to anybody's problem. And that is why Western education comes with exam. Western education writing exam is a proof that Western education doesn't solve any problem in the society. Because when you are in the axis of anything that solves problem,